All right,
Okay.
There we go.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our special U.S. Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon of August 20th, 2023. I am here at the Radisson Hotel in Dublin, Ireland, where just 2 hours ago, Longevity Summit Dublin 2023 concluded. This was a conference, the second of its kind, hosted by LEVF, the Longevity Escape Velocity Foundation, which is Dr. Aubrey de Grey's scientific foundation. And I was thrilled to be in attendance here for the past 4 days. I am also on the board of directors of LEVF. I'm the treasurer, and we're joined today by the attendees of Longevity Summit Dublin, David Wood, who is the executive director of LEVF. We also have among us Didier Coeurnelle, our frequent guest on our virtual enlightenment salons from AFT-Technoprog in France. Didier resides in Belgium, but he made the trip to Ireland for Longevity Summit Dublin. And also in the studio, we have our U.S. Transhumanist Party Legislative Director, my apologies, our Director of Visual Art, Art Ramon Garcia. So we're all pleased to be with you. And we're also going to do some interviews that I recorded with noteworthy attendees of Longevity Summit Dublin. But first, I would like to invite David Wood to share his impressions of the summit, anything that you thought was interesting or noteworthy. David, please feel free to inform us.
Many thanks, Gennady. This was an astonishing summit, I can say that. I've been attending summits organized by Aubrey de Grey since 2007, when they were in Cambridge. I've been at some in Berlin, I've been in some in Silicon Valley, and I can say this was the most impactful yet. And I know Aubrey feels the same. I had a chat with Aubrey just a few minutes ago, and he said, walking on air, in part because of the attendees. I think, he said, there were a total of 350 people in attendance at various times over the past 4 days, whereas the most who had attended one of his conferences before was 250. But it's not just a matter of quantity. It was the caliber of people attending, many for the first time. And many questions from the audience started off like this. This is my first longevity meeting, and it's fascinating. And then people would go into medical questions, or questions about demographics, questions about practical therapies, and so on. So there are a lot of enthusiastic people in the audience for the first time. There also was a remarkable spread of speakers. And if I start picking out one or two speakers as being particularly interesting, I'm almost certainly going to be unfair because there were an enormous number of interesting talks. These conferences are not slow by any means. They are packed full of speakers. Generally, there's about 30 minutes for each speaker, including questions and answers, starting 9 o'clock in the morning, continuing till about 7 o'clock in the evening with just a few breaks. So there's a lot going on every day. And one of the first people speaking was the chair-elect of the American Medical Association, which is a sign of the caliber of the people who are interested to take part. He talked about management of pain, especially management of pain as people got older. A very important practical topic. And there were lots of practical talks about aspects of how can we help people to have a better quality of life as they age. But there were also a whole host of fascinating talks about different therapies, new therapies. And I found my brain almost exploding at points, which is unusual for me because I can manage to take in a lot of things. But talk after talk, some cases I knew before what was being said. A few cases I sort of tuned out because I couldn't quite follow all the details of the biochemistry on the slides. But in the most cases, I thought, wow, this is really interesting. There were, for example, about 3 or 4 approaches to curing cancer. including one which Aubrey told me he was very impressed how fast it had gone. Let me see if I can get the name of the person. I'm looking through my list as I'm scrolling. It was a method that has a drug that targets the expression of telomerase. And so that's what cancer cells do. There is expressions of telomerase, and in that case, the drug would attach and convert the cell into a suicide cell. In other words, the cancerous cell would suicide rather than growing. There were very promising aspects of how that might develop further. So there were treatments offered for cancer. It's one disease of aging. There were treatments offered for Alzheimer's and other mental health issues, other brain health issues, sorry, including a mechanism to help to clean out some of the damage in the brain because of a failure of sufficient cerebral cleaning fluid. That's not the right name for it. There's a much better medical term for it. But the notion is that part of the mechanism, which normally cleans out detritus or damage in the brain, which works very well most of our lives, eventually it stops working because there's a small little hole near the top of our nose through which various fluids are meant to pass, and at various stages in our life that can get jammed up. And there's a simple mechanism that might unjam that and allow some damage to be cleaned out. So that's an example of some of the treatments for particular diseases. But there was also a whole host of discussions about aging itself. What can we learn from different animals that have remarkable aging characteristics? Talk on the bowhead whale, for example, talk on naked mole rats, which confirmed that, as far as we can tell, the longer naked mole rats live, up to 40 years now, there's been some kept in captivity, they don't become more prone to die. They remain as likely to live as when they were younger. So there is no accelerating mortality with these naked mole rats. There was a talk about bats given by a Dublin professor called Emma Teeling. She talked about the remarkable longevity of these very small creatures. And if you knew some aspects about some of these creatures, that they have a high body temperature, that they have a high metabolism, that they have a higher quantity of sugar in their blood, normally you would think such a creature would not live that very long. But the bats have evolved mechanisms, indeed birds. Some birds featured in another talk given by Professor with a background in zoology, Steve Ostad. He talked about birds with great longevity. And the point of talking about all of these is to draw attention to the possibilities that we will learn from various mechanisms that these creatures have evolved over their own evolutionary history. And it's likely there are a whole host of different mechanisms. So these are some of the interesting talks. I'll just mention maybe a couple more before I hand back to Gennady. I particularly liked the remarks of Andrew Steele, who is famous for a book, Ageless, How to Get Older Without Getting Old. I probably got the title wrong. He gave a talk not on the hallmarks of aging, but on the hallmarks of talking about aging. How can we, who are enthusiastic about the possibilities of rejuvenation, how can we have productive conversations with others who are more skeptical, who are not used to this? So he gave a list of about 7 hallmarks of successful talking about aging. Very practical advice, like being gentle with people. Be prepared for questions about ethics. Don't rely on science which is unproven. Rely instead on the science for which there is a good track record. Otherwise, there is the risk that if that science is subsequently shown to be unreliable, everything else we said might fall under criticism. And one more hallmark he mentioned was, yes, we can still be optimistic despite many bad things that are happening in the world, and we can point to opportunities to have much healthier lives. That theme was picked up by somebody who has a slightly similar name, so sometimes I confuse them. Not Andrew Steele, but Andrew Scott, who's a professor of economics from the London Business School. And he built on that theme of a better narrative. He said that as an economist, he was used to the standard narrative, which is that society has a problem with aging. We have an aging society in which there are more people who are infirm, costing lots of money. And his analysis is that, on the contrary, we have the benefits of a longevity society rather than the troubles of an aging society. And that if we can just allow people to be productive members of society for a few more years, that will boost the GDP by a significant amount. And there are all kinds of benefits, not just economic benefits. This economist, Andrew Scott, of course, he will talk about the economic benefits, but he pointed out that there are things that are more important than economics, such as good health, and maybe health can be seen as a luxury good if need be. And we should just make it clear to people what the possibilities of a healthy longevity society is. So there are a few more speakers who caught my mind, but I think I've said enough as an opening remarks. I'll just say once again, it was an astonishingly good event, very well organized by Martin O'D and the whole team of people behind. It ran very close to schedule, and the audience was, as far as I can see, uniformly positive about the whole thing. Gennady.
Yes, thank you very much, David, for that excellent and extremely diligent overview of Longevity Summit Dublin and many of the noteworthy speakers there. We will likely come back to you to hear some of your thoughts about a few of the other speakers, but now I wanted to play some brief remarks from Dr. Aubrey de Grey himself when I caught him for a minute before this morning's first panel.
So, Gennady Stolyarov has had the brutality to ask me to say something coherent at 9 a.m. after the gala dinner. And I am not really capable of doing this, but I will nevertheless try to say something. This, of course, is the last day of Longevity Summit Dublin 2023, which is has been every bit as wonderful as it was always going to be, what with the insane speaker lineup that we were able to put together, and of course also the unprecedentedly large number of attendees. It's been fantastic. We've got a final day today which is undoubtedly going to be just as fantastic, and I have got to chair a session in 2 minutes, which means that I'd probably better stop there.
All right, thank you very much, Aubrey. Much appreciated.
All right, so that was Dr. Aubrey de Grey welcoming us Transhumanist Party members and the audience to Longevity Summit Dublin. I recorded a number of conversations with noteworthy speakers and other guests from various segments of the longevity field, from scientists to advocates to people focused on politics and policy. The first interview that I would like to play is with Tanya Jones of Keinice Bio.
Hello, Tanya. Welcome. Could you please briefly introduce yourself and Keinice Bio?
My name is Tanya Jones. I'm the founder and CEO of Keinice Bio, Keinice, which is a new public benefits corporation that has been formed to explore the cryopreservation of organs for transplant.
Yes. And please tell us about the novel cryopreservation technique that you're working on.
Well, it's a method that combines the traditional vitrification, which prevents the formation of ice, and another process called persiflation, which is the flowing of gas through the vasculature to rapidly and uniformly cool the organs down to safe long-term storage temperatures in a way that prevents the catastrophic fracturing that happens in large structures.
And could you tell us about the problem of fracturing as it pertains to cryopreservations today, both in the context of organs as well as in the context of cryonics?
Well, in the context of organs, for the most part, the organs that have been transplanted, successfully cryopreserved, rewarmed, and transplanted are all small scale. Rabbits and rats, And the methods that are used in those cases do not scale to the human size. And the advantage of our method is that it works better on the larger structures than it does on the small. So our work will focus exclusively on larger organs, primarily swine for our work with hearts, and human organs that we will be sourcing from the transplant network.
Mm-hmm. And of course, today there's a critical shortage of organs for donation purposes for patients who need them. Do you think that the technique that you're working on could help increase the availability of such organs and the survival of patients in the future?
That is absolutely the case. Here's the thing. A lot of organs that are available for transplant never get harvested and go to waste. And the reasons why include the fact that once you harvest an organ for transplant, they immediately begin to degrade. In the case of hearts, if you don't have a recipient within a 4-hour window, they won't take the heart. And in the case of kidneys, it's a little bit longer, 24 hours. Sometimes they go a little farther. But I envision a world where if donor organs come into a hospital, bank everything. Our method will allow that. You can just basically cryopreserve and cool every organ that might be available for transplant and sort out the recipients after the fact. And the advantages of once these organs are in a cryopreserved state, they stop degrading. And the method is such that you can ship these organs anywhere in the world. So the 4-hour time window for a single heart won't matter. If the person who needs that heart is across the country from you and it's going to take 6 hours, it won't matter because that heart is not degrading. So it opens the door to actual banking of organ, which has additional benefits, like you could do improved matching. If a person who was to receive an organ got a little bit sick, a little too sick for the transplant, that's okay. You just wait for them to recover. And the organ also, in that case, doesn't get wasted. The person gets the treatment that they need. So just having the ability to begin banking organs of any kind will immediately begin to address the waiting list for the transplant network.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that would open up some much needed possibilities. What steps would need to happen in order for this vision to be realized?
Well, ultimately, the initial stages of our work at the new company involve improving systems that have already been built and basically rebuilding a couple of them. But that said, with our focus on hearts in particular, we want to go for the fastest possible FDA approval for this medical device that we're building. And we think that hearts are a really amazing candidate because of how important they are from a health and a longevity perspective. Unlike kidneys, where you can survive with just one, hearts you really need. And with only 30% of the hearts that are available for transplants being used, you can conceivably think of 1 or 2 years of banking hearts will fulfill the needs of a heart for every single person currently on the waiting list.
Yes, that would be immensely important. So, Tanya, you've been here at the Longevity Summit for 3 days now, and you were here also in 2022. What are your impressions thus far?
Oh, I love the meeting. It's a great meeting. The focus on longevity and aging sciences is just fabulous. And I come to this largely to get the word out about my work, but also to hear about some of the amazing projects that other people are working on. I've already gotten a couple of new ideas that I hadn't considered about how cryopreservation technologies might be modified using methods from other fields in the anti-aging research space. So both to inform and to learn. And this is a fantastic place to do it because it's all really good science.
Excellent. Well, we're pleased to have you here, and I enjoyed your presentation. Hopefully the public will be able to see it not too long from now as well.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tanya.
All right. So that was Tanya Jones of Keinice bio. For some audience feedback, we have Daniel Tweed joining us. He writes, "This sounds like a game changer in the organ transplant field." Hello to Daniel, our US Transhumanist Party 2024 vice presidential candidate. And our friend Mike Lazine writes, "Human organs seem to be like seafood. They start to go bad at a pretty fast rate. So great to see that Tanya is trying to find a way around this." And I completely agree. Daniel wonders why evolution didn't create multiple hearts. Well, evolution may have led to some intricate results, but they are not ideal by any stretch of the imagination. Actually, a lot of the discussions at the summit pertained to essentially the evolved natures of some of the human systems, including the processes that lead to biological aging. And unfortunately, we have not yet been able to improve on evolution for our own species. David mentioned Stephen Ostad, who actually made the point that human beings are some of the naturally longest lived species for our size. And evolution did a lot of useful work to get our species to the point where we're at, the point where we're not dying as rapidly as other primates, or especially as rapidly as mice. But nonetheless, evolution is not perfect. Evolution did not get rid of senescence. And so it is incumbent on us human beings to address this problem. Now I want to ask Didier if he is able to share his impressions of Longevity Summit Dublin and any noteworthy observations.
Hello. Well, I don't have so many things to say because the description made by David was already quite complete. I would have to bring some. You asked also something who could be better. I would say that some people were a bit too optimistic, but in general, it was really great. And I don't have anything special at the moment to say. Maybe also because I'm very tight after this 4 days. I think it's been about probably 30 or 35 or even more hours of conferences. And of course, maybe also it's a great opportunity to meet many people, and like David already said, so there are quite a few people who are here for the first time and who are really already very enthusiastic people and very interesting. So I had also privately quite a few very interesting discussions, and that gave me a few ideas. Voilà, that's it for the moment for me.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Didier, for sharing those impressions. And indeed, one of the main benefits of this conference was the ability to have so many in-person conversations with various attendees. Aubrey likes to arrange conferences where people will often stay late into the night to discuss various matters. And indeed, as a result, most of us have gotten less sleep than was ideal, but we managed to have some really fascinating conversations on longevity science, on philosophy, on the future of our field. And of course, I was able to film the interviews that I am going to be showing today. So thank you, Didier, for offering your impressions. Now, the next interview that I would like to show is with a gentleman who expressed an interest and also demonstrated a considerable skill set in fostering rational debate that allows individuals to see the nuances of one another's positions, which is, of course, a desirable goal for the US Transhumanist Party, one that we have endeavored to foster through the way we have moderated our debates, as well as through these virtual enlightenment salons. So this gentleman's name is Shaif Basier, and I am going to try to play my interview with him right now.
Welcome, and could you please yourself and what you do?
Well, thank you. My name is Shaif Basier. I am the owner of Atomic, a financial consultancy firm aimed at helping the financial sector work better. So I'm basically a broker and an intermediator between capital providers and capital seeking companies. That's basically what I do.
Ah, excellent, excellent. And you also spoke to me briefly about the importance of fostering nuanced debate about contentious issues. Could you speak a bit as to your efforts in that area?
Yeah, so one of the things we learned in the finance sector, I work in also for many banks, during the credit crisis, we saw a lot of problems that were very systemic and caused a lot of troubles for humanity. And one of the fundamental reasons for that, according to me, my perspective, is the lack of open and honest dialogue, debate, interdisciplinary debate between professionals of different disciplines. So I'm also one of the founders of nationaldebate.eu, and what we do is we try to constructively hack the debate culture, because it's overly polarized. It's more towards the one can only win if the other one loses in an argument, and we try to foster a win-win debate, yeah? So that you gain mutual empathy, because if one person understands why they think the way they think and the other persons understand the same, then you get you get to a better place where you can reach new solutions.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you on this, because that is what we try to do in the US Transhumanist Party. As a minor political party, we have a bit of an uphill battle in the polarized political climate of the United States, where so many people feel compelled to select either what I call the red tribe or the blue tribe, and sometimes this kind of polarization seeps into all areas of life. It seems that no choice that was previously just considered a matter of personal preference is immune from being classified potentially as belonging to the red tribe or the blue tribe. And I'm wondering, from your experience, how would you go about essentially trying to improve the debate culture in a setting like that, where the polarization has just become so toxic and so widespread?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question, thank you, and I fully agree. I also must add that I'm also involved with National Debate, but also with other startups that I'm part of, with innovating the political space. I think it's very important to innovate in politics. Politics have become very polarized. Actually, wrote a white paper on something called water politics, also inspired by your American president, George Washington, who in 1794 wrote a very nice paper that I really recommend your readers, your listeners and viewers to reread and revisit, where he actually kindly asked the people not to organize legal bodies in the form of political parties. Yeah? So that is a very important piece of work of George Washington. What I would say, how we go about it with regards to constructively hacking the national debate culture, is at least first creating the circumstances, healthy circumstances, to have mutually respectful dialogue, and not immediately too fast dive into the topics. Of course, because there are already many venues, many organizations that immediately dive into the topics. But by pioneering this field for a while, we've learned that just bringing people together, eating together, learning to talk about things in a not too direct manner, is helping set the right stage. And I think we will have to have patience with that, because we have basically been traumatizing our cultures for a very long time with this overly polarized habits, these overly polarized habits. it will take some time. The problem did not arise in 1 year. It will not be solved in 1 year either. It is a process that has taken many decades. So it will take time and effort and initiative from many people to try to create the circumstances where we can be more empathic towards each other. And yeah, that's what I do. And it's very difficult for me to, I think one of the key challenges is to find people who want to have the patience. Many people want quick solutions. Some people say, oh, no, I don't have time for this. We need to talk about the problems and the solutions. I say, yeah, fine. And there are many political parties where you can also do this, and many organizations where you can do this, but there should also be space for spaces where people just want to convene and just express and build relationships across all factions, across all classes, races, and economic stages they might be in.
Mm-hmm.
I hope
yes.
that resonates with you.
Yes, it does resonate with me, because I think polarization thrives in environments where it's easy for people to view others as just abstractions, as just expressors of particular beliefs rather than whole human beings. And if they take the time to see another person who may have a different point of view as also a complex and nuanced and integrated human being, then they might have more willingness to engage in dialogue and try to understand and not try to strawman that person's arguments.
Yes, true. And if I may add, one thing I forgot, you triggered me.
Mm-hmm.
Look, the thing is, we think we pay attention to each other, but actually in this information deluge that we are living in, we are bombarded with so many messages that we as humans forget to pay attention to the inner wisdom that we all inherently have inside of us. And you know, if you are at network events, things are quick, you need to exchange a card, what are you doing? That is fine, but there also needs to be a space where you can have long-term dialogue and build relationships. And it requires people that have that mindset, who want to do that. And unfortunately, in this very hasty culture, there is a lack of people who are sufficiently conscious about the importance of this subtleness that we're talking about. And I hope that with videos like this, we can elevate the understanding and motivate people to choose for kindness, choose for patience. We are all human beings, and trying to many people have different goals in life, and we need to be respectful of that somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And this is actually why we favor long-form conversations in the US Transhumanist Party. Our weekly virtual enlightenment salons serve as essentially gathering points online, of course, but we have regular attendees and we have guests whom we invite, and we learn a lot about their perspectives, their work. Sometimes they come from somewhat different perspectives from our own, but we nonetheless manage to gain a lot of value from interacting with them. Now, I'm curious also to hear a bit about your impressions of Longevity Summit Dublin now that we've been through 2 days of it. What did you find particularly interesting or noteworthy?
Yeah, so what was really very much above expectation is how it feels to actually be among people that are in very many aspects like-minded. They are not like-minded in all aspects, I must say. There are many people who have different views, are focused on different things, but in the core essence, these are people who are enthusiastic about the ability to influence the longevity and the health span of people. And that is really refreshing. I met some really kind people with shared values, and I think that is as I just said, you need to first create the circumstances for the right kind of dialogue and innovation to happen. And I think the Longevity Summit was really helpful for that. It was the first time for me, and I was really, I'm really enthusiastic about what I'm experiencing here.
Excellent. Well, I hope you keep enjoying the Longevity Summit. I hope that you might be able to come back next year as well, because certainly this event is all that you describe and more. It's a great way to connect, and I'm very pleased to have met you as well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, so that was Shaif Basier, and I think the sentiments he expressed are very much aligned with what we seek to achieve here at the Virtual Enlightenment Salons. Our friend Alan Crowley characterized us as the Chrome tribe, politically upwing as contrasted with the red tribe and the blue tribe. Daniel Tweed also points out that some techniques that are similar to what Shaif Basier mentioned are nonviolent communication, system-centered therapy, and Marshall Rosenberg's techniques. So thank you, Daniel, for sharing that. And the next interview that I would like to play is with an individual who has been tremendously politically active in Germany. His name is Felix Werth, and he heads what is now the Party for Biomedical Rejuvenation Research. It used to be the Party for Health Research, but in late 2022, it got a more ambitious rebrand. And I was quite pleased to hear Felix's thoughts on why that rebrand took place and what he hopes to accomplish with it. So Felix will be up next.
Welcome, Felix. This is Felix Werth of the German Party for Biomedical Rejuvenation Research. And we have spoken in prior years back when it was the Party for Health Research. So could you tell us a bit about your rebranding and the ambitions behind it?
Yes. So last year we had a strategy change. The party was founded in 2015. And as you said, initially it was a party for health research, and we promoted the hastening of the development of medicine that will prevent the disease of old age, like Alzheimer, cancer, and so on. And we didn't talk about life extension. We just said that it's about preventing disease. And everybody thought that it's a good idea, that people that we asked, nobody had something against it, but we didn't get much attention because there's already so much research going on in this field against cancer and Alzheimer, and they said, oh, okay, the big parties in Germany, they already do this, so why do we need another health research party? And also it was misunderstood a lot, because Party for Health Research, everybody thinks, understands something different with health research. Everybody has a different idea what health research is. So, but it was always about promoting rejuvenation research, the sense approach, the repair approach, so that, yeah, we always wanted to help to hasten the development of medicine that will also let us live longer. But yeah, we initially wanted to say that explicitly because we wanted to avoid questions about things like overpopulation and so on. And so last year we did the strategy change. Now we especially say that it's about life extension and rejuvenation medicine, so that people can live potentially maybe for thousands of years, if you consider the longevity escape velocity. And yeah, now we focus on that. So on our election posters we say now that so one of our election posters has in big letters written the question, where do you want to live in 800 years? And the election posters also say that it's about the development of medicine that will maybe let people live for thousands of years. And it's very provocative, but it gets a lot of attention from the general public and also from the media. And so many more people go to our website, or many more media outlets interview us. And on our website, we explain the solid science behind it. So we explain the science approach, the hallmarks of aging. We link all the relevant sites, also other sites like Lifespan.io or Fight Aging, or this, yeah. So we get and also the media. If the media interviews us, we can also explain to them that it's not like a joke, because many people initially think, oh, it's a joke when we talk about living that long, but then we can explain the science when they ask about it, and from my experience, they understand it and they take it seriously, and yeah.
Yes.
Most of them are interested in it, and yeah, and now a lot of people, of course, or almost everybody asks, yeah, but what about overpopulation and the pension system that will collapse, and won't it get boring and so on. But so we also address those questions on our website and give good answers. Good possible solutions to those imagined problems that might occur.
Yes, and I am very much in favor of this new strategy. Of course, as you know, we have been pursuing that kind of very open approach about our objectives in the US Transhumanist Party since its founding. And indeed it is the case that this can sometimes attract controversy or objections, but those objections exist anyway, and they would exist even for a more, let's say, euphemistic version of the same set of proposals. It's just that if one is open about one's goals, then people can voice those objections and they can be discussed and debated, and we can offer our responses, our counter arguments, and hopefully advance the discussion in that way. So I very much think that this new strategy is likely to get a lot more attention and a lot more media coverage and shift the Overton window of discourse. Now, I also know that you are a candidate for the European election in 2024. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, so the party exists since 2015, and we participated already in 20 elections in Germany. So those were so we participated in the last European election, in the last 2 federal elections in Germany, and then in 17 state elections in Germany. And on federal level and on state level, there's a 5% threshold. And that means that you only get, as a party, into parliament if you get at least 5% of the votes. But at the European level, at the European election, there's no threshold. So you get your first seat once you get at least 0.5% of the votes. And at the last European election, 2019, we got 0.2% of the votes. And so next year there's a European election again, and I think the reason why we didn't get more votes yet is because we are still very unknown, because there are a lot of small parties in Germany, and a lot of people don't care so much about the small parties, they don't know about them. So once we get better known, I think we have a very, very good chance to get much more votes, and there's a realistic chance that we get at least 1 seat in the next European election, which is next year in June, I think. So last time it was in May, I think this time it's a little bit later. Yeah, I think in June. So having a seat in the parliament, of course, would help a lot with the advocacy. Because, for example, we could give talks in the parliament as a parliamentarian, and we could do lobbying, like directly in the parliament. And also we could hire people that do advocacy full-time. I mean, if you have a seat in the parliament, if you're a politician, you can hire people for about 20,000 euro a month salary to work for you full-time and do advocacy. And yeah, so this would help a lot and make the work much more efficient. So that's our hope that next year we will be in the European Parliament.
Indeed, and based on your vote totals back in 2019, it seems that you're in striking distance. You would just have to a little more than double your previous vote total. And you have already been engaging in a lot of impressive activism, your various posters about the diseases that are exacerbated by aging, and the poster with Aubrey de Grey. I think they did make an impact on the people in Germany, and I'm curious what advertising, messaging approaches you plan to pursue for the 2024 European Parliament election to raise that level of public awareness further.
So we made a very good experience this year. We participated in 2 state elections in Berlin and Bremen, and in October we participated in a state election in Hesse again on October 8th this year. So this election campaign will also be a very good promotion for the European election to get more known for that. And so with our new designed election posters, for example, with a question with years, or another election poster asks how old do you want to get, like 80, 100, 500, or so you can vote now, you can choose now, with your vote. Or another poster says that like over 100,000 people die every day of aging, and things like that. I mean, those posters really catch attention, and the people just take photos of those posters and share them on their social media account. That's our experience. So we will probably keep the strategy that was this year already a success, and continue to do that. And yeah, we hope that we get more donations so that we can buy more election posters, so that we can hang them up everywhere in Germany, and get seen by as many people as possible. And yeah, and I wanted to add to the results. So there were already 3 state elections where we already had 0.5% of the votes. So that it's not an impossible goal to get 0.5% at the European election. Of course, we would need the 0.5% German-wide, and so far we only had it on state level, but still it's not impossible.
Yes, indeed, and I'm sure those posters are memorable for the people who come across them, because they generally don't see those messages from politicians. And here is a party that is promising something radically different and radically better. At least I hope that many people will see living dramatically longer as radically better. But at the very least, they will remember you, and they will engage with these ideas, which is the most important element of this. Of course, if you do get elected to the European Parliament, that would be an immense boost in visibility. And I think many media outlets, many academic writers are going to cover that event, and that will further advance our movement. Now, I'm curious, if somebody wants to help your efforts, what can they do? And perhaps your answer will differ depending on whether that person is in Germany, or whether that person is in another EU country, or whether that person is outside the EU. But what are some possibilities?
Yeah, so we are interested in all kinds of collaborations, basically. So because like also prior to elections, when more people come to our website and yeah, read there, so we link to all kinds of other sites. So we're also happy to link to other advocacy organizations or other things that are going on in the longevity field that want to have more views, and yeah, you can help. So you can go to our website. It's a German website, so it's Verjüngungsforschung.de. I don't know. You can just Google German Party for Rejuvenation Research, and you will find us there. But we also have so our program and our election program we translated into English, and also our statutes. So on this website you also find the things in English. You can read it in English. Yeah, but yeah, the most important things we translated into English. And yeah, so people can donate, you know, for our election campaign. People that don't live in the European Union can donate a maximum of 1,000 euro per year per person. Or yeah, that's the limit. And yeah, and we are interested in all kinds of collaborations basically. And you can become a member of the party. The membership is free, and you don't have to live in Germany. And if you are like a scientist in the aging field, you could also join our advisory board. So we have a scientific advisory board and a strategic advisory board. And the more people we have on there, the better it looks for the general public, right? Because if they see, okay, there's a party for, so are they telling, you know, what are their credentials, you know? Is it serious what they are talking about with the sense approach, and what is the marks of aging? Is it even like a serious thing, you know? But if they see, okay, there's like scientists who support this, who stand behind it with their name, then this also helps, yeah.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you for putting forth all of those suggestions. Hopefully, some of our viewers will explore your website and consider the possibilities that you put forward for offering support. Now, you've been here for the first 2 days of Longevity Summit Dublin. What are your impressions and perhaps some of the most noteworthy aspects that you've observed thus far?
Well, there are more people attending than last year. That's a good thing. So it grew quite a lot. And yeah, so far I met a lot of interesting people that I didn't know before. Even people that live in my hometown and are in the longevity field and that I didn't know before. So it's very nice to see that the field grows now.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and given that you're meeting people from your hometown, perhaps that will expand your base of support as well.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. We already discussed that, and we will continue to discuss that, yeah, to work together.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad that the summit is proving to be fruitful for you and your efforts, and I hope you enjoy the remainder of it as well.
Thank you. Thanks for interviewing me.
Indeed. Thank you, Felix.
That was Felix Werth of the German Party for Biomedical Rejuvenation Research. You are encouraged to visit their website, which is linked here. And interestingly enough, Felix also interviewed me during Longevity Summit Dublin. Hopefully his interview with me will be out shortly, so please be on the lookout for it. So our next interview is going to be with Martin Lipovsek, who is from Slovenia. He is a philosophy graduate student, and with him, I discussed the outlooks of historical and contemporary philosophers on the prospect of radical life extension, as well as how those outlooks may be changing over time. So we will play our interview with Martin next.
Please tell us a bit about yourself and your interest in longevity.
Hello, my name is Martin Lipovsek. I'm from Slovenia. At the moment, I'm a PhD student. I'm doing a PhD from philosophy, and my philosophy thesis is focusing on life extension or longevity. So, in details, I'm applying phenomenology and existentialism as a schools of thought to the questions in life extension and longevity.
Interesting. And how would you characterize the outlooks of phenomenology and existentialism on longevity? Obviously, there could be different thinkers within those paradigms of thought who could have different views, but what is your overall impression?
Yeah, my impression is the main is that life extension is actually under-researched. We have very small number of philosophers who actually research this new field, which I believe is really important because so big changes in the way how we live are actually opening up new perspectives, new way of thinking about ourselves and about the world, new explanations of ourselves, and this is completely new field that is really not studied enough.
Yes, I completely agree that it is insufficiently studied. Are there any philosophers, either historical or contemporary, that you think have done a good job covering the prospect of radical life extension?
Yeah, we have some contemporary philosophers, who are now working now, and they are also some of them participating in our longevity movement. But historically, philosophers, I must say that unfortunately, most of them, you have some very small number of exceptions, but most of them are accepting this view that death is not a good thing, and one explanation is simply rationalization, to actually help humanity deal with death with such a way that you say it's something good for you and then you don't care so much and you're happy about it.
Yes, it seems that a lot of historical philosophy has served the purpose of providing consolation rather than solutions, but there have been some, I think, quite good thinkers historically who rejected death, and one of them was the Marquis de Condorcet, for instance, who unfortunately died in prison during the French Revolution, but he wrote his history and the future progress of mankind, where he posited that essentially mortality from old age could one day be overcome, and Benjamin Franklin is another example. But you're correct that historically, because mortality was inevitable for the vast majority of our existence, I think philosophers tried their best to find ways to make peace with it rather than to fight it.
Yeah, mostly. There are exceptions, but we can start from Socrates, who said that he's looking forward to the next world where he will continue speaking philosophy. So death is just travel and so on, and then you have different other philosophies, but there are exceptions, even some famous one. For example, you can find even some sentences in René Descartes, who said that science will actually also help us deal with the problems of aging and so on. So there are exceptions, but mainstream is... I hope that now, since we see that aging can be addressed, that I'm hoping that the mainstream will also change.
Yes, and it's interesting how philosophy can itself evolve and respond to changes in technology. So while many philosophers would consider their work to be fundamental in terms of describing the nature of reality or man's place in reality, so to speak. In truth, that understanding itself evolves based on what is possible and what is widely recognized as being possible.
Yeah, I would agree. Philosophy is actually really this kind of, how can I say, spiritual work that is connected with the whole sphere of humanity, of human beings. So it goes in both directions. For example, science inspires philosophy and philosophy inspires science. And through the history, it went in both directions many times.
Yes.
This influence.
There are certainly feedback loops
Yes.
involved. So would the public be able to read some of your research at some point in time, say when you finish your PhD?
Yes, in around 2 years, PhD will be finished, and I'm also happy to do it. I plan to do it also in English. I mean, the final thesis will be in Slovene language, but I plan to do like a short book or bigger book also in English language to share my findings.
Wonderful. So we shall be looking forward to that.
Yeah, and I have one more thing to say.
Yes.
So I'm also leading Society for Vital Life Extension of Slovenia, which is NGO who promotes longevity in Slovenia. And we are organizing a conference on healthy aging. This will be on 10th of October in Ljubljana, so everyone who is in this kind of this region of Europe is welcome in person. And we also have a Zoom or a YouTube stream, so feel free to connect us and watch the conference.
So this October 10th in Ljubljana, which is the capital of Slovenia. There will be an online option for anyone who is willing to join. I think this is a great idea to spread awareness of longevity science and, of course, the philosophical and advocacy dimensions of it as well. So I wish you all the best with that conference. I'm also curious what your impressions have been of Longevity Summit Dublin so far. This has been the third day of it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, lectures are very high quality and we hear some really groundbreaking new stuff. And also the people here are just fantastic. I mean, it's like meeting old friends, you know, that you didn't know before. So it's really fantastic.
Yes, indeed. And we are all friends here because we share a common purpose, a goal to uplift humanity and uplift ourselves in the process. So thank you very much, Martin, for joining us today. It was great speaking with you.
All right. So that was Martin Lipovsek, philosophy PhD student from Slovenia. We look forward to the publication of his PhD thesis about 2 years from now. This is an unexplored or underexplored, I would say, subject, the approaches of various historical and contemporary philosophers toward longevity and how this is evolving over time. So our next interviewee is Dr. Ivan de Weber, and he is going to speak to us about the efforts of his company called Cortex Discovery to harness neural networks in order to discover potential targets for longevity medicines. So our next interview will be with Dr. Ivan de Weber.
Welcome. Could you please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your work?
Yeah, so I'm Ivan. I'm that type of guy who doesn't really accept aging. Like one of my first memories is my parents basically saying that we had to die. So I was a little worried. I thought about cryoconservation, whatever. But when I came in the university, I spoke to that professor and basically I told him if we tweak a little bit that mechanism, we would live longer. And he replied after a few seconds, yeah, maybe, but why for? And then I realized like there is maybe not there is this philosophical thing about accepting that I don't really accept. So I met my business partner about 35 years ago. We were 10. I told him I want to live forever, and he replied that I'd rather replace humankind by robots. So I did my PhD in the genetics of aging. I have some targets I want to activate. I think they could lead to tremendous life extension. However, drug discovery sucks, it's slow, so I started to focus on cheminformatics. There I saw some big gaps in machine learning. I convinced my business partner, who back in the time was professor in the University in Quantum Information, to retire, and we built Cortex. That is not only focusing on longevity, but that's its purpose, but that accelerates drug discovery. So we're working on two technologies. One of the technology is basically learning from data. So the input is a compound, the output is a property, and if we have enough data, we are as good as the reproducibility of the experiment to predict any property. So we've done that in the internal sets, but we've done a few proof of concept. So we've done it for COVID. Out of all the compounds that were never tested for COVID and that were in the clinic, we have chosen 6. 5 out of the 6 were proven to be reducing the viral load in SARS-CoV-2 infected cells. In the project with Aarhus University, we've done something similar with Stanford University. The compounds were not toxic, and we can predict also toxicity, fluorescence, and pharmacological properties by default. Then, whenever there is a target that is of interest for longevity, in our database, we can find activators. So now we're building a longevity pipeline on, let's say, known targets and some of the other targets we have in mind. And we're building a second technology that's actually called docking. And here we have a completely different approach, and we actually learn from simulation that ultimately will be quantum. And we use a neural net for that. That's quite similar to the other neural net, and we are already able to conform small molecule faster and more accurately than the state of the art. And now we have a docking prototype, and the compound is slowly going into the packet, and now we are about to compare the accuracy with the state-of-the-art tools, and that will enable me to work on the targets I wanted to activate already 20 years ago. So that's basically what we're doing. And some other follow-up question?
Yes, so this seems to be quite a promising approach in terms of identifying candidates for drugs that would then be taken through clinical trials. And of course, one of the greatest barriers on the road to making effective treatment widely available to patients is the very lengthy review process, either by the Food and Drug Administration in the United States or the European Medicines Agency in the EU. So about how long would you expect your process to be able to reduce the total time taken from essentially the beginning of the search for an effective drug and effective treatment and the final approval? Clearly there would have to be clinical trials afterward, but the identification of the initial targets would be reduced. So how many years could that save?
The preclinical phase is lasting in between 2 and 5 years. When things are optimized, I think we can squeeze that between 2 and 5 months, because the job that we're doing is taking between 2 and 5 weeks actually, just because we have to select compounds. Actually, we don't only for an instance for the COVID, we had some data on infected cells and compounds, but we didn't have so much data. And the reason why we did a good job is because we also looked at the ability of compounds to inhibit viral proteins and also host cell proteins that are being hacked by the virus. So we're going to do the same with longevity. So I'm not just going to look at, let's say, mTOR inhibitors or DNA repair activators. We're just going to put an equation so that thing can take anything between 2 2 weeks and a few months. But definitely I'd say we can reduce the time by a factor of about 10. And most interesting is the cost, because we can parallelize heat discovery with yield optimization, because since we can screen 10,000 compounds per second on one GPU, which makes 1 billion per day, we're then able to have many more candidates, and we can already pre-select them by pharmacological properties. So it's really parallelizing these things, and then whenever there is a candidate that is being tested, so we will have to do some tests, but much less. We will actually be able to generate analogs. We have a system now that generates like de novo compounds or analogs of active compounds, and then there is a possibility of screening billions of analogs in a matter of days, and then choose the best of the analogs without having the pain to go through to synthesize them and wait months for them to be synthesized, tested, and altogether, like, we can save lots of time and cost.
Yes.
The main purpose is longevity, but definitely we want to put a step in the pharma industry to accelerate drug discovery in general. But the in-house pipeline will be for longevity, and there is a big problem with pharma and longevity that has been discussed in this congress in Dublin, where we are right now, which is quite interesting, is that pharma or governments will probably not invest directly in life extension. So the idea would be to choose the compounds that would extend lifespan, but that have a direct application in some specific age-related disorders. So I believe that the first compounds that I'm going to eat, meanwhile, is going to be in phase 2, 3. They will be, let's say, Alzheimer's, Parkinson, or cancer drugs that look like they are non-toxic at all. And actually, I will get them for longevity, like people do with metformin or stuff like that. But I think they're wrong. They should take berberine.
Well, yes, it seems that this kind of indirect approach for now is the one that is necessary to follow, at least until there is a specific aging-related disease indication that can be tested for in official clinical trials. But it's promising that you're able to identify these targets faster and, as you've said, save a few years from the typical process. Now, I'm curious with regard to the targets you identified that effectively neutralize the viral load for SARS-CoV-2. How quickly do you think those could get through the regulatory approval process and perhaps be used in patients to help end the pandemic?
Okay, so this is we're going out of the longevity topic, but that experiment specifically was just linked to the fact that we're a startup, so we had to do a repurposing project, and that actually made sense in the context of COVID and in the context of our budget, because the lab did the test for free, so that's why we tested only 6 compounds. And the idea is that these compounds are like already in clinical trials, so the cost for it is not that it's not comparable to drug discovery, because most of the tests, I mean, all the tests have been done, so we just have to do a few preclinical tests that will be linked to the efficacy and the dosage, and if the dosage is similar, then we can quickly speed up things. So depending on who is doing it with us, you could quickly have like some compounds on the market. So yeah.
Yes, well, I would hope that they get on the market sooner rather than later, because we certainly need all of the tools we can get in our arsenal to defeat this virus. But I wanted to also ask you your more general impressions about Longevity Summit Dublin. You've been here in 2022, and now this year again. We have been through 3 days of the conference thus far. What are your thoughts?
Some interesting guys, some interesting collaboration potential. So nothing extremely new for someone who's been swimming in that type of pool since ever, but definitely some promising contacts, and very surprised that I missed these little contests that they have, like for funding new ideas in some of them. I don't remember the name of these things. And happy to see that some completely outsider guys are coming and are doing some speeches, like the AI guy really coming from with a PhD in machine learning, coming from informatics, just like bringing some kind of nice ideas there.
Yes, there has certainly been more of an emphasis on the use of AI during this Longevity Summit than last year.
Yeah, there was ChatGPT and so on, but I still have a problem with this because like there is a lot of AI that's being discussed in many fields, and AI and longevity is a little bit the same problem because people have been selling us snake oil for like thousands of years for longevity. So now if you're a longevity guy and people don't follow the latest things, you are snake oil as well. And it's the same for AI. And I have the feeling that many AI companies, including here, are not really doing AI. That's just one little impression that I have in general.
Mm-hmm. But it's interesting how because of ChatGPT or various generative AI models that create images, the public has noticed AI to a much greater extent, and there has been a significant public reaction. Not all of it has been positive. I wish people saw more of the opportunities rather than the threats in AI. But do you think there could be discoveries or events in the longevity field that would generate a similar public recognition of the possibilities?
Yes, and I believe we should maybe, it's just a question of making, let's say, creating some trend out of some exciting events, or like, let's say if we use ChatGPT a little bit, because we are doing it, of course, just like for quickly reading some stuff actually. That's the only, at the moment, we explore the programming, but our programmers are a bit more specialized. But the idea is that we could say, yeah, the drug has been discovered also using ChatGPT, and I would say it's to market it, and that probably could help to convey the stuff further. I wouldn't do it for ChatGPT or whatever, but it's a way to grasp the interest of the crowd. So I think it's very interesting times.
Interesting times indeed. Well, thank you, Ivan, for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the Longevity Summit.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
All right, so that was Dr. Ivan de Weber, the CEO of Cortex Discovery and a fellow transhumanist. As our friend Mike Lazine noted, Ivan has a similarity to me in that he could never accept death, even as a child, and he decided to do something about it. So we look forward to more contributions to the discovery of longevity medicines from his company, Cortex Discovery. Please check out their website at cortexdiscovery.com. And my final pre-recorded interview is quite an extensive one. It is with Dr. Enej Kuscer, also from Slovenia, but now based in the Netherlands. He is the CEO of a company called New Bio, and New Bio offers the opportunity for patients to get some really detailed analysis of their health data that they would voluntarily share with that company. And there was a lot of discussion at the Longevity Summit on open data and on how to empower patients to gain actionable insights from their health information. So next up will be Dr. Enej Kuscer.
Welcome. Could you please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your company?
Okay, so I'm Enej Kuscer. I'm from New. New is a company that takes a very systemic approach to longevity. So we do a systems biology based kind of deciphering of your human self. So we analyze your genome, epigenome, microbiome, telomeres, blood biomarkers, and so on, creating your quite unique human digital twin. And through that, we kind of help you understand, first of all, basically what makes you you, what are your fundamentals, what have you been kind of up to until now in your life. So basically what is driving certain, health aspects of your body, of your, gut health, of your, brain health, blood, etc. How you're aging, you get to see not just your age clocks, but what is affecting your age clocks. You're seeing kind of, actionable insights into how you can start, tweaking, modifying, improving, and biohacking your biological age or your overall health performance. So through that, you're kind of learning about, various aspects about your biology. So whether you want to deep dive into your liver health or, brain health and anxiety and so on, or whether you just want to know more simply about your lifestyle interventions, diets, hacks, supplements, and so on, that's kind of the platform for you. And so far, it's really very, very, kind of fundamental biology driven. But in the next iteration, we're also integrating that with, all kinds of wearable devices. So in addition to kind of having that biological fundamentals, you also see kind of real-time insights, how your stories are changing, how you can start kind of fine-tuning your biological markers and, hopefully aging younger. That's kind of what we do.
So would people be able to contribute their medical test results, their wearable data, other health information that they collect, and how would they go about doing that?
Yes, so that's an excellent question. So far, so it's a stepwise, development. And is a startup, so we've been working on this for a few years, but it's just now that we're starting to go to the market. And so the first, let's say, phase of new was that we have our own test kits, we have our own labs and so on. And so you basically get your analysis done through us. But we've just launched, I think a few days ago, the ability for you to upload your own data, whether you've done regular annual health checkups with your blood analysis, or you've done your genome with 23andMe or any other labs. Maybe you've got your microbiome data. The problem with microbiome is usually you don't get raw data information from other service providers. But yeah, I mean, basically from a few days ago, you can actually start uploading your own historical data and see your trends through time. And the same way you kind of build your digital twin and get into kind of your longevity recommendation aspects of a story. So good question, yes.
Yes, and that's an excellent ability for people to have, because I know for me it's the case that I've been to a variety of medical providers, and I also collect certain data on my own. It would be nice to have some sort of central repository of that information and some analysis of it in an integrated way, whereas an individual medical practitioner only sees perhaps one aspect of it, what that particular person ordered for the patient. So I'm interested in what you do to kind of pull all of that information together once you have it. How do you translate it into actionable insights for people?
Yeah, so first of all, excellent question, but also most importantly, really happy to hear that, so like what you're saying for yourself, because that's really where we see New as a platform, as our mission, right? Is we really, the way we're building the platform is really to be that enabler of these, let's say, longevity opportunities or health optimization opportunities, right? So unlike most others, first of all, we are very big believers of the power of this longitudinal data, of building your kind of knowledge base of your health as it evolves through time, right? But you are your data, you are the owner of your data, right? So the problem is many times kind of you either do your health checkups with labs or, private companies and so on, they own your data, right? You only get to see bits and pieces, and it's in chunks, right? So in our case, we've built a platform so that you are the owner of your data. We're just your repository where you safely store it. And through the engines, through the platform, through our algorithms and AI and so on, we help you decipher that and visualize that in a very actionable and fun way. but all the time you control the data. So you can, it's like a bank, as long as we can be the best possible service provider for you to appreciate your data, you are with us. As soon as we can't, you can basically just download back your data and delete your profile and you're out. So that's kind of the first part question answered. Maybe it's really important first for people to understand that they are the owners of their data, and it's our mission to help them aggregate that and track that through time, how they can start, fine-tuning, optimizing, improving, etc. That's the first part. The second part is, what do we actually do with that? How do we actually crunch the data, right? And so there again, it's a combination. I mean, it's a lot of science behind that. So we have a team of, MD, PhD, clinical geneticists, microbiologists, biotechnologists, bioinformaticians, biostatisticians, data scientists, and so on. So it's a very, very kind of science plus data focused company. We also do a lot of ML, so machine learning, AI, etc. But I can tell you, so despite all that's going on out there in the world with, kind of AI revolution, it's amazing. We're excited about it. But the AI cannot yet really properly crunch your data to truly understand what's going on, right? So we still use, we've done a lot of work in the past few years to kind of really try to kind of cross-correlate all this complex data. So unlike, again, other companies who just look at your genetics and like what's your gene potential or whatever, or they just look at your blood, or right now you have some inflammation and high lipids or whatever. No, we analyze things and cross-connect and integrate and cross-correlate and see how that relates to certain types of risk factors in your kind of within your age brackets, like plus minus 7 years and so on, to really understand what are kind of the drivers, the health drivers, where you're above your average, where you're maybe below your average, which things are driving your health risks further and so on. So even if you look at your biological age clocks, which is all the talk of these kind of few days of the conference, yes, we measure your biological age for sure. You can see your epigenetic age, your blood age, your microbiome age, etc. But we also combine that into kind of a unified age. However, when you go into your blood age, it's not just a number. You actually see which are the contributing factors to it. What are the drivers of that number? Which biomarkers are making you older, or which are making you younger compared to your peers? So then you have actionable insights, how you can start fine-tuning and tweaking those individual markers. And there's this cool feature that you can zoom in and out in your kind of biomarker levels and see kind of what lifestyle changes, diets, hacks, and so on are there that you could be doing in order to optimize those things, right? So again, what we try to do is use a lot of really rigid science, and every statement that you will find there, like when you go down to a gene level, or whether you're at the liver or brain or heart level, or whether you are at a whole body level, what the statements you're seeing, all of that will see scientific reference. You click on those, you get to actual clinical and scientific papers behind those studies and research and analysis. So again, we really try to make sure that in the app, right, and you see some stuff, oh, this improves such and such, right? Where's the evidence? And then you can go and see the evidence, and you can see the strengths of the scientific literature behind it, right? So if it was done on mice or on actual clinical trials on, maybe 5 people or tens of thousands of people and so on, right? So it's really important that we're very, very heavy science-based, but at the same time, we try to make it as simple and as fun to understand, as engaging, that you can actually do something actionable to start kind of fine-tuning and optimizing your biology. And again, it's not just all about longevity, right? And it's also not just about the health span, which of course it's one of the primary missions. But we do a lot of work with young people who are into sports, professional sports, or who are just into college, or high-flying professionals who are working hard days and days. There's fatigue, brain fog, burnouts, and so on. You want to figure out how you can actually also kind of aid to that current maybe overburden of your system, and make sure that you are not doing too much of a long-term damage, reduce that fatigue, improve the recovery, etc., etc. Yeah?
Yes, and I know many people who would benefit from those kinds of insights, and I'm glad that you're offering links to scientific studies to back all of the recommendations. I'm curious about your inclusion criteria for the research that is cited on your platform. What ways do you have to filter out reliable research from perhaps less reliable research?
Yeah, so thank you so much for this question. So for now, again, it's a stepwise iteration of the platform. So for now, basically you just see every sentence has a reference, and you go there and you see the paper and so on, right? Our algorithms behind do a heavy work on making sure that those papers are heavily scrutinized. So what we do is we look at the impact factor of the journal, the p-value of the statistics, so how strong the statistics, whether there was a clinical study on humans, whether there was an in vivo study on rats, or whether there was an in vitro study on cells. How many subjects, what's the N number, was it maybe 50 people versus 10,000 people and so on, right? So we already have all of that. So only the most relevant strong data is shown there as a reference. But in the next iteration of the platform, which is coming in a month or two, you will actually see directly the strength of science next to the evidence. So you will actually see whether that's a clinical study, human clinical study, great science, or it's mechanistic, in vivo, in vitro, etc. Right? So again, really good question. We make great effort to make sure that only stuff that is truly relevant gets pushed forward. But very soon you will actually be able to see the grade of science behind it. Yeah, so we'll actually have all the sliders behind, not just the data behind genes or microbes or markers, but also behind all the interventions. So how much do we actually know about broccoli and sulforaphane inside broccoli and so on, right? There is some literature, but how much of that is clinical, how much of that is animal, and how much of that is just cell-based, right? So all of that will be very, very shortly seen through the platform as well.
Yes, it's excellent that you're going to be offering that level of transparency and that level of education for the users of the platform, because they're not just going to be learning about their own health, they're also going to be learning more general insights about the state of the science. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that the general public needs to know a lot more about. This could encourage healthier living and boost longevity, just in the fact that people will have the wherewithal to make better decisions. So I'm curious, is your service available to people anywhere in the world or just in certain countries right now?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. So right now we're fully operational in the Netherlands. We're a Dutch-based company. We are also fully functional in London, in UK. UK unfortunately has so many different kind of areas that infrastructure is not fully covered yet in terms of, so our limitation, to be very direct, is in terms of blood testing, right? So maybe to take a step back, so our platform has two components. One component is test kits that or data that can be done via test kits, which is saliva for genome, epigenome, and so on, and stool samples for the microbiome. This can be shipped anywhere in the world, and if you already have the data, it's just digital. Just send it across, right? So if you're from Brazil, US, or anywhere else, you can go online, order our test kits, get the test kits by DHL, submit your samples, and you have your twin starting to be assembled. If you have your data, you have just the digital upload part, just send it up, you start assembling your twin. Now the second component of your profiling is the blood, right? And so the problem with blood is that, those at-home test kits with finger pricks, they're fine for very niche applications, like maybe you want to get certain type of vitamin levels, or maybe magnesium or whatever. But if you really want to deep dive in terms of longevity markers and how your system really works, you can't do that, or with a few drops of blood and shipping by post. So we really have to work with local infrastructures. In some places we have a network of nurses. In some places we partner with local labs and so on. So depending where you are, that's basically the infrastructure that then works with our customer support team, and then the app that takes you to get the blood done. So again, going back to your question, if you are in Netherlands or UK, Slovenia and so on, we can analyze all of that. If you're elsewhere, you can still sign up for the whole platform, but then in that case you would need to still be a little bit proactive and go get the bloods done yourself through any type of private or public vendor, and then you can just upload your blood profile, and then you get the complete digital twin kind of analyzed, and the whole kind of platform experience. So long story short, yes, we can provide the services globally. However, in some countries we can actually take you by the hand and just get everything done. In some countries it requires just a little bit more proactivity, so you can get most of these done via our test kits, or even if you already have the data, but a little bit, especially the blood, needs to be done a little bit more actively yourself.
Yes, thank you for that clarification. And I think for patients in the United States, they could still readily avail themselves of your platform, because it's possible in the US to go to a facility like LabCorp is a popular facility. Absolutely. Or Quest Diagnostics. Absolutely. And get a report of one's blood test results, and that report is the property of the patient, so the Absolutely. Patient can share that information with others.
Exactly. You just upload that securely to our system. Our AI then just basically then deciphers, recognizes all of the data, and immediately integrates it into your digital twin. So absolutely, to your point, wherever you can get that done easily. I mean, it's basically just the same. So you get all the instructions of all the biomarkers that are part of our analysis. You go to your local lab, and it's just a simple upload. So very easily done.
Wonderful. Now I wanted to ask you, since you've been here at the Longevity Summit Dublin, you've experienced the first half of it, what are some noteworthy observations that you have about it? What particular events or topics or speakers struck you as being the most interesting or intriguing?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I must say I really enjoy seeing how the industry has matured in the last years. So I started my journey actually more than 2 decades ago. I did my PhD on rapamycin back then. We were still thinking it's an anti-cancer drug, and nobody has been discussing longevity back then yet, right? So when I was naively asking questions about why don't we do something about the repair mechanisms that we have, as part of our genetic fundamentals, big pharma guys were all furious about, the aging is just not a recognized disease. We can do something about Alzheimer or Parkinson, but aging is as it is, right? And so the field has really matured over the last few decades, and especially the last few years. I think that there's a second degree of maturity now coming, that initially there was the kind of the hallmarks of aging, and the grim age epigenetic clocks and so on, which was required for us to get the excitement going. Now there's a little bit of that, let's say, appreciation that things are a little bit more complex than we initially thought as well. So we're starting to kind of congregate on, unified understanding that a lot is known, a lot is still unknown, but it's definitely, a field that has been, let's say, fundamentally shifted our understanding of human health, right? So I almost call it like the third era of medicine or health, right? Because initially, from ancient Greeks and, Egyptians even, we were able to mend things by stitching things together or cutting things away, right? And then we had the Louis Pasteur and all the kind of, from antibiotics to microscopes and so on. We were kind of in the second phase of, okay, now we are trying to identify people who've fallen ill, right? They have a disease, they have a sickness, and then let's give them interventions, drugs and so on to bring that a little bit down, right? And now we're entering that third phase where we actually go after the root cause, right? And there's been this huge frustration of the pharma, like for decades they've been trying to develop drugs for Alzheimer, for those, amyloid plaques, etc., and the problem was they were not going after the root cause of the disease. They were trying to kind of get rid of the plaques, they were trying to get rid of, right now what we're trying to do with this new approach is deciphering who you are, what's going on, what is driving that, let's say maybe very, very subtle disturbance, right? Inflammation, maybe this, unease of the cell, and let's get it back to optimal levels before an illness comes along, right? And so even if we don't yet talk about that true, complete rejuvenation, right? Even though I think that is coming very, very shortly, but we are unified in this idea that we start to really go after the precision interventions, and we go after the root cause of illness and disease rather than trying to just think about drugs to treat something that is already damaged.
Yes, and indeed it is a major paradigm shift to try to address the root cause. One of my frustrations with contemporary mainstream medicine has been that sometimes the standard of care is just to prescribe a drug to treat the symptom, when one really wants the problem to be gone. One really wants the body to be functioning as optimally as it could be, rather than just keep taking a medicine to suppress the symptoms, but then that medicine may have side effects and may lead to other health complications later on.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, I can tell you, and again, maybe with a disclaimer, because when we were pre-market, while we were still in the pilot phase, right now we really position New as a wellness app, right? So we help you to stay well, we help you to optimize your health and performance and so on. But in the pilot phase, we were really exploring all kinds of possibilities with this type of systems biology-based approach, right? So I can give an example of a couple of clients, a couple of pilot participants who signed up. They were recently prescribed statin drugs by their doctors, and as it turns out from the digital twin analysis of their biology, these statin drugs were very, very highly likely to cause serious heart conditions, probably within a very short period of time, right? They had completely just the wrong genetics, right? So when that data was highlighted and of course with the consent, doctors were informed. First of all, doctors were very appreciative, changed the regime and so on. We could prevent potentially the wrong intervention. But the doctors became our clients as well, because they were really, really keen to see how this style of systems biology-based approach could help in the future drive even more proper health promoting precision medicine, right? So again, maybe just as an extra disclaimer, we're not a medical platform at this stage at all. We are a wellness app, but you can see how many errors we are currently doing in the current medical practice today, as you're mentioning, in terms of just this generic one-size-fits-all approach. Maybe then let's see half a year later how it works or not, right?
Yes, indeed. And I'm sure the vast majority of doctors would want the best outcomes for their patients, and if this information could help them make more customized recommendations that provide those better outcomes, they would be happy to avail themselves of it. But I really see what you're doing as helping to inaugurate the era of personalized medicine, which we really need. As you pointed out, each individual's body will respond a bit differently to particular treatments.
I would say mostly, particularly the era of personalized health. I think, ideally, we should have less and less need for actual medicine intervention. I think we should, we're not talking about acute. You have, a car hits you, or you fall down stairs, or you break a leg. But I'm talking about this chronic illness, right? So there, I think we really should primarily start focusing on, and again, a lot of people are already talking about these terms. We've been talking about them for years now, to move and shift from the current state of, we call it sick care, really, into a proper health care, right? So it's not just about precision medicine, it's really about taking care that you stay healthy. So healthcare, preventive, personalized, with all the kind of, you really know what's going on, and you optimize your health at any stage in life, for kind of best performance and for optimal health span and longevity.
Yes. Personalized preventive healthcare. I like that. And thank you very much for speaking with us today. I would highly recommend for all of our viewers to check out NU and the services that your platform offers.
Really, thank you so much, and I appreciate, and we'll be very happy to accept any new members to the platform. I think it's an amazing movement that is happening today. So we're really we're really proud to be part of let's say I think a shift in the way we approach health overall. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right. So that was Dr. Enej Kuscer of NU, and now the company is just called NU. So with those interviews having been shown, I'm curious if David, Didier, Art Ramon, you have any feedback or further observations during the last 5 minutes of our stream today. David, please go ahead.
It's fascinating, the interviews, but in a way, it's only touching on the surface of a rich set of presentations and conversations that we're not going to have any chance to do justice to in the last 5 minutes. But I did want to pick up a point that Daniel made a little while back in the chat. This is before the earthquake struck, the 5.5 Richter earthquake in the middle of Hurricane Hillary in Southern California. So I'm hoping everybody there is all right. What Daniel was suggesting, if I scroll back far enough, is that therapies that can prevent or deter death should be more aggressively considered for emergency use authorization and immunity from liability statuses. The reason I pick on that is to turn to a little bit of the political discussion that took place during the summit. We had a presentation by Dylan Livingston, who is the CEO of A4LI, the Alliance for Longevity Initiatives, and he has been working systematically for quite a while now with politicians in Washington to try and make them more favorable towards some longevity initiatives. And if I have a moment, I might pick out 4 things that Dylan talked about. They did get a good rapport with politicians in Montana, where Republican, I'm not quite sure what he is, but maybe a member of the local state assembly, the state Congress, had put through a right to try bill, which is now law in Montana, which goes some way towards making it easier for people who are ill to get access to various drugs which have not been through the full certification and regulation process yet. And they are talking about extending it to the national level. So that's one thing that Dylan was able to talk about. Secondly, he is very careful to maintain a bipartisan approach. So he has a steering committee, maybe that's not quite what to call it, which has currently 3 Republican politicians and 2 Democrat politicians from the Washington House and or Senate. And they have 2 more Democrats who want to join, but they don't want to just take 2 Democrats until they have at least 1 more Republican to join as well. So they're keeping it admirably level to avoid any allegation that this is purely a partisan policy. And he is also careful, this is my third point, he's also careful to avoid language which might set off triggers. So there was a discussion about should they be promoting the concept of open data. And although Dylan himself is very sympathetic towards the idea, he feels that such a terminology has hackles attached to it in some parts of America. So although it would be a good policy, he's prioritizing other things instead, such as the right to try bill, because this might jeopardize keeping that level playing field. And the final thing that they've accomplished, which is very impressive, is that because the 5 that he has already in his board or council, I'm not sure what it is, 4 of them sit on a House procurement committee. Again, I've got the terminology wrong, I'm sorry, but they have voted significant budget to 2 aspects of longevity healthcare. One, to explore use of biomarkers, to put more money into clarifying what good biomarkers are that can give some indication of somebody's biological age. And secondly, to put money into investigating one particular type of treatment for aging, which is partial epigenetic reprogramming. So there's a very positive sign there. I mean, Gennady, I'm sure you had thoughts listening to Dylan, and maybe you can chip in here.
Yes, indeed. So the piece of legislation that was enacted in Montana is Senate Bill 422 to expand eligibility for the Right to Try Act. It was sponsored by Senator Kenneth Bogner, who is a Republican in Montana. And what Dylan stated was there are aspects of the longevity cause, but different aspects that can appeal to either Republicans or Democrats. And I agree with the desirability of trying to find common ground with potentially sympathetic members of each political party and not seeking to alienate either one. If I had the opportunity to ask Dylan a question in that session, it would have been with regard to the potential for exacerbated political polarization in the United States, essentially leading to the longevity issue becoming a casualty of that polarization. Right now, we don't yet have that situation because A4LI has been able to work with politicians from both political parties. And of course, the US Transhumanist Party is transpartisan, so we intentionally try to avoid taking sides on culture war issues. I wanted to ask Dylan whether he thought it would be possible to avoid essentially becoming a casualty of the polarization going forward. And that's still a question that I will field to Dylan in the future. I think it's tremendously important to convince as broad a segment of the public as possible that longevity is their cause as well, irrespective of whom they voted for president or Congress or their state legislature. So those are my thoughts on the panel that you moderated, David, and I think you did an excellent job on it. I'm wondering if Didier has any final comments before we wrap up.
Yeah, I had a small comment about the fact that it's fascinating that there are so many conferences concerning longevity these last weeks, months, and years. And the progress that we see is sometimes spectacular, but for me, we must not forget that we have also a totally new situation since 2 years, that 2 or 3 years and more in the US, that the life expectancy is not anymore rising. So for me, it's kind of sometimes really totally strange that we still have this progress, technical progress, medical progress, more and more people having ideas, proposals, doing things, but this decoupling with general real medical progress in the population is for me fascinating, depressing, and maybe another thing. So about open data, just one sentence to say there are many people who speak about open data, like even people who were speaking here, but to really apply open data to make really data available to all scientists, it's more complicated. But once again, it was a very good conference. Yeah.
Yes.
That's it.
Important insights and a very good conference indeed. Thank you, Didier. Unfortunately, we do need to conclude our salon for this evening, but thank you to David and Didier and Art Ramon for joining us. Thank you to all the attendees of Longevity Summit Dublin and everyone who tuned in to the stream this evening. Live long and prosper.